The sun beat down like a curse on the cracked red dirt of Langston Crossing. The wind, hot and sharp, carried the stench of sweat, blood, and horses. Somewhere out in the prairie, buzzards circled slow and lazy over the bones of the last poor soul who crossed this land without favor or coin. Wood creaked as the whipping post swayed slightly in the dry wind. 4 women were tied there, their backs bared, skin broken, blistered. Flies settled in the blood as they hung limp in their restraints. The townfolk had long dispersed, bored of spectacle, off to their saloons and shade. Mei Lin could barely lift her head. A lock of blood-matted hair stuck to her cheek. Her lips were cracked, her tongue thick. She tried not to cry anymore. It only dried her out faster. Around her the other women groaned softly. One had gone still hours ago. She might have been dead. Her wrists burned, bound tight to the splintered beam. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. A week ago she had walked into Langston Crossing with her aunt and cousin, worn from weeks of travel, looking for honest work in the boarding kitchens near the railhead. They never made it that far. By dusk the sheriff had called them undesirables, and the men in town were already drunk on the stories told about Chinese girls, stories with too many hands, and no truth at all. When they resisted, they were beaten, and now they were here, punished not for what they had done, but for what they were. Mei Lin was 19. Back in Guangdong, she had been a silkworm farmer's daughter, taught to walk light, speak low, and carry shame like jewelry. Her mother had braided her hair every morning and told her, "Your honor is not your name, it is your silence." Mei had been silent through most of her life, but today, silence had brought her to a post like cattle. Dust stirred on the horizon. The wind changed direction slightly, and with it came the distant clatter of hooves, sharp and steady like a war drum. At first, it was just sound, then shadows, then a golden glint off leather bags and gunmetal. 6 riders crested the hill to the east. Cowboys. No law badges, no ranch brandings, just trail dust, loose reins, and gold tied heavy to their saddlebags. They didn't speak, didn't yell or call out like wild riders usually did when they came into a town. They moved like ghosts, deliberate, wordless, watching. They rode straight toward the post. Mei Lin tried to straighten herself. Her arms trembled. She gritted her teeth and pressed her heels into the dirt to stand. The leader was tall, lean, with sharp cheekbones and deep lines in his sun-leathered face. He wore a wide-brimmed hat low over storm-colored eyes. A long scar traced from his left ear to his collarbone. The others rode slightly behind, each one sunburned, silent, hard-faced. They dismounted in a slow, synchronized rhythm, their boots hitting the ground with hollow thuds. One of them walked up to the sheriff's porch, tossed a small pouch onto the rocking chair like it was a dead rat, and pointed to the post. The sheriff, a fat man with yellow teeth and a long stained vest, shuffled out of the saloon doors with a toothpick wagging in his mouth. He didn't argue. He counted the gold with a nod, eyes barely drifting toward the girls. This had happened before, maybe not to them, but to others. Mei Lin heard the whisper before she understood the words. "They're picking." A wave of nausea rolled over her. Her skin went cold even in the heat. Her mind screamed, run, disappear, vanish, but her feet were rooted, wrists bound. One of the cowboys, young and light-haired, walked slowly in front of the 4 girls. He paused at each one, looked, tilted his head. No words. He stopped at the girl next to Mei Lin. She sobbed and turned her face awaso. "Hey." He moved on. Then the tall one stepped forward. He looked right at Mei Lin. She held his gaze. She didn't mean to, didn't have the strength to fight, but something in her wouldn't look away. There was no cruelty in his eyes, no pity either. Just silence. He raised his hand slowly and pointed. Mei Lin's knees buckled. 2 men came forward and unbound her from the post. Her arms dropped limply to her sides. She collapsed into the dirt like a marionette with its strings cut. The sheriff gave a grunt. "Y'all can have her, no comebacks, she's yours." They didn't reply. Mei Lin was hauled to her feet and tied to one of the riders' saddles, not like an animal, but not like a person either. She couldn't speak. Her throat was raw from thirst. Her feet dragged through the dust as they led the horse westward, out of town, into the open plains where nothing but sky and death lived. Behind her, she didn't dare look back. They rode for hours. The sun blistered her skin through her torn dress. Her back throbbed with every bump and sway. Once or twice she drifted near unconsciousness and jerked awake with a cry. Each time, the rider on the horse ahead glanced back but said nothing. Eventually they stopped beneath a rock shelf beside a dried-up stream bed. The light turned orange, shadows stretched long and thin. They untied her. She collapsed again. This time the tall man approached and knelt beside her. He poured a bit of water into her mouth. Not much, just enough to wet her tongue. Then he soaked a cloth and gently, slowly, dabbed at the wounds on her back. His touch wasn't tender, it was deliberate. She flinched, expecting pain, but he didn't press hard. He cleaned around the wounds, not in them. She opened one eye. His face was unreadable, that same flat calm, but something behind it, familiar grief maybe? He didn't speak her language, and she didn't speak his, yet neither moved to break the silence. A fire was lit, dried meat passed around. One man tried to joke but it fell flat. The others chewed in silence. She sat curled near the edge, knees drawn to chest, half sick from hunger but too afraid to eat. The tall man tossed her a small piece of jerky and a strip of cloth. She chewed slowly. When darkness fell, the stars blazed bright, and the plains whispered with coyotes and wind. The men took turns sleeping. 2 kept watch. Mei Lin lay on a rolled-up blanket, her back burning, but her mind sharper now. She studied them, these quiet riders, not slavers, not good men either. Something else. Gold and silence, that was all they seemed to carry. The tall one slept sitting up, rifle across his lap. A feather charm hung from his belt, a plains tribe carving old and worn. He was not just cowboy, not just killer. Something older lived in his silence. As dawn broke, she watched the horizon, eyes bloodshot and unblinking. She did not cry. She would not cry anymore. They were moving again by first light. She was allowed to ride now, on her own horse, slow and watched, but not chained, not struck. The young blonde cowboy whistled sometimes, tuneless, nervous. He kept glancing her way like he wanted to ask something but didn't know how. After a while she realized they weren't headed to any town. They were going deeper into the wasteland. Days passed. Her strength returned slowly. The wounds on her back scabbed. Her feet hardened. She spoke not a word, but watched, learned, waited. Once they passed a band of broken wagons, bones picked clean, arrows still sticking from the wheels. Another day, they buried one of their own, an older man who simply didn't wake up. No one cried, no one prayed, they just covered him with stones and rode on. She began to understand. These men were ghosts, not of flesh, but of war, of pasts they never spoke of, and she had been chosen not for beauty or joy, but because she too was a ghost now. By the 5th night they camped near a gully with water shallow, but clean. Coyotes yelped in the distance. Mei Lin found herself sitting beside the tall man. She watched as he sharpened his knife. He glanced at her and nodded toward the stars. She looked up. Thousands of them. Then he did something unexpected. He took off his hat and laid it in his lap, pointed to his chest, then made a slow slicing motion across it, then pointed to her. A scar. A loss. She didn't understand all of it, but enough. She reached out, took a small stick, and drew a bird in the dirt, then crossed it out. He stared at it a long while. Then, for the first time, he spoke. One word, rough, almost broken. Wife. She blinked. He looked away, jaw tight. Maybe they weren't that different after all. 2 broken things wandering through a land that didn't want them. That night, when the wind picked up and the fire died low, she didn't move away when he sat beside her. And in the silence between their words, something settled. Not peace, not safety, but understanding. They both had been chosen by something cruel, but neither would stay broken forever. And somewhere beyond the dunes and the dust, the story was just beginning. The morning air tasted of dust and tension. The fire had burned down to embers, and pale pink light slipped over the horizon like a fresh wound. Mei Lin sat quietly, arms around her knees, eyes locked on the tall man across the ashes. He hadn't spoken again since last night, but something had shifted between them. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was no longer fear. They packed in silence. The cowboys moved with that same ritual stillness. Saddlebags tightened. rifles slung, horses fed and brushed like lovers. Mei Lin moved carefully, mimicking their rhythm, understanding it was the only way to be tolerated. She didn't know where they were going, only that it was away from Langston, away from anyone who'd ever known her name. The girl she'd been, the daughter of the silkworm farmer, was somewhere back at the post, her blood in the dirt. The blonde cowboy, Eli, she'd overheard someone call him, offered her half a biscuit and a flash of a nervous smile. She took it, nodded once. He looked like he wanted to speak but didn't dare. His youth stood out against the hard lines of the others, like a pencil sketch among etched stone. By mid-morning, the land turned rough. Hills rolled low, scrub brush clawed at the horses' ankles, and sharp crags jutted from the earth like broken teeth. The wind whistled through rock arches and carried whispers that made Mei Lin's skin crawl. She didn't ask where they were. There would be no answer. A storm was coming, not a clouded one, but something deeper. She could feel it in her bones. They rode until the sun clawed high. Heat pulsed in waves, rising from the ground like breath. The trail narrowed into a pass, flanked on both sides by shale cliffs. The lead rider, a thick-shouldered man with a long beard, slowed, hand to his revolver. The others followed suit. The air changed. No sound but the creak of leather and the occasional cough of a horse. Then came the buzz. Not from insects, from men. 5 figures emerged from the rock above, faces wrapped in red scarves, rifles aimed steady and low. Bandits, or worse. The tall cowboy, Mei Lin had started calling him Hawk in her mind for his sharp stillness, held up a hand. One of the figures called down in a lazy drawl. "Ain't no towns ahead, boys. Must be riding heavy to take the rocks." The bearded cowboy spat. "Ain't your concern. Every man's burden becomes another's opportunity," the bandit chuckled. "Now them bags look mighty jingly from here. Gold, I reckon." Hawk didn't answer. He dismounted slowly, eyes never leaving the ledge above. The others did the same. Mei Lin followed their lead, heart pounding, feet quiet. "You know how this goes," the man above went on. "Drop the bags. Walk away. We might not shoot your horses." One of the cowboys, young, red-faced, twitched and reached toward his sidearm. A shot cracked. Blood sprayed across the rock. The red-faced man fell backward, dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Rifles barked. Horses screamed. Dust exploded into the air. Mei Lin dove behind a boulder as gunfire shattered the quiet like glass under boot. She covered her ears, heart hammering, eyes shut tight. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the stone. Then she heard it. A grunt. Pain. Close. She turned. Hawk lay slumped beside a bush, blood oozing from his side, one hand pressed firm, the other still clutching his rifle. Without thinking, she scrambled toward him, staying low, crawling like a child under siege. He saw her coming and shook his head, but his mouth was tight with pain. He couldn't move. "Don't," he whispered. She didn't stop. Another crack above. Dirt sprayed her shoulder, but she reached him. Blood pooled fast now, a dark stain spreading across his coat. She pressed her hands to the wall. Bond warmth soaked her palms. "Stop," he hissed, face pale. She shook her head and whispered, "No." There were no more words. Only sound. The gunfight ended as fast as it began. 3 bandits dead, 1 captured, twitching on the ground with a shattered leg. The 5th had fled into the hills. The cowboys regrouped, but the damage was done. 2 of theirs dead, another wounded, and Hawk, pale and trembling, losing blood fast. "Damn fools had us boxed," muttered Eli, kneeling beside her. He looked at Hawk, then at Mei Lin. "He ain't gonna make it far." She didn't understand every word, but she understood enough. She stood, pointed at a small grove of trees just beyond the rocks. "Shelter," she said. They looked at her, surprised. And then, slowly, they followed. They moved Hawk carefully, built a lean-to from broken branches and blankets. Mei Lin boiled water, tore strips from her own skirt for bandages. She cleaned the wound, just as he had done for her. When he groaned, she held his hand. It wasn't kindness, it was survival. The next days blurred together. The men scavenged. She stayed. Hawk faded in and out of consciousness. Fever took him, then left him, then returned. She poured water down his throat, wiped the sweat from his brow, sang softly in a tongue no one else understood. On the 3rd day, he opened his eyes fully. He stared at her. Then, in a rasp barely audible, "Why?" She thought for a long time. Then she said, "Because I know what it feels like to be left." He blinked slowly. Then for the first time, he smiled. Just a little. That night, a strange stillness settled over the camp. Eli sat by the fire, plucking a soft melody from an old banjo. The others murmured low, talking about things Maylin didn't try to translate: loss, money, paths back home. She sat beside Hawk, whose breathing had steadied. He told her his name, Matthew Hawk. She repeated it, the syllables awkward on her tongue. He told her about the war, about the woman he had loved. Her name was Lien. She had been born near San Francisco. Her pa rents came for the railroads and died by the sicknesses that followed. Lien worked in a laundry shop, sang like a sparrow, and once sewed his coat after he'd been knifed in a bar fight. They were to marry. Then came the fire in Sacramento. He had been too far to save her. Too slow. Too late. Every mile since, he said, has been a kind of penance. Maylin didn't ask for more. Some wounds didn't close. They only changed color. In the days that followed, he sat up, ate, healed, slowly. She noticed the way the others deferred to him now, not out of command, but out of something deeper: respect, regret, a quiet code none of them said aloud. One evening, Eli approached her. He offered her a small bundle, clothes, not fancy but stitched clean, stitched new, a gesture, a bridge. She bowed slightly, then took them. That night, she and Hawk sat under the stars again. He handed her a small coin, a Chinese copper coin with a square hole in the center. "Lean gave me this," he said. "Long time ago. Said it would keep me safe." He looked at her, held it out. She hesitated, then reached forward and took it, her fingers brushing his. They didn't speak again, but something had been exchanged. The following morning, they broke camp, saddled up, readied themselves. Hawk rode slow, but he rode. Maylin rode beside him. Eli turned in his saddle and nodded to her. "Next stop's Elkhorn Ridge, mining town. Trouble's coming there, sure as sunrise." She didn't know what awaited, didn't need to. The girl from Guangdong was gone. The woman riding now, dust on her skin, fire in her eyes, had survived too much to fear what came next. As the group rode toward the shimmering mirage of mountains in the distance, the wind carried with it no answers, only the sound of hooves, the rhythm of survival, and the silence between two people who had both lost everything and yet found, somehow, a way forward. And behind them, in the rock-etched pass, the blood of the fallen dried slowly in the sun. The road into Elkhorn Ridge was lined with ash-colored trees, their trunks blackened by fire seasons past. The air was thin and sharp, dry as bone. Maylin's eyes scanned the craggy outline of the mining town as it rose from the basin like something half-sunken. Smoke puffed from chimneys, but not one voice or bell echoed out to greet them. A wind moved through the valley that whispered of silence and something waiting. She tightened her grip on the reins, boots steady in the stirrups. Hawk rode beside her, his color still pale from the wound, but his posture upright. He didn't speak, hadn't since the night before, when the fire had cracked low and he'd traced Lien's name in the dirt with his finger, only to sweep it away with his palm. The others rode close behind, Eli's banjo gone silent, his eyes scanning the rooftops for movement. What once passed for a frontier town now reeked of rot, old gold dust and spent ambition. Buildings leaned into each other like broken teeth, windows black, doors hanging by rusted hinges. A collapsed chapel stood at the hill's crest, its steeple skewed sideways like a snapped bone. There were no children playing in the dirt, no women at the washing lines, no laughter, just men, watching. Maylin saw them at once. Shadows tucked between planks, eyes peeking past corners, dirty hats, guns visible, not drawn. This wasn't a welcome, this was a warning. The riders moved forward anyway, no hesitation. Hawk gave a short whistle, barely a sound, but it carried meaning. No one dismounted. A man stepped out from the saloon doors, tall, thin, with a butcher's apron over coal-black clothes. His mustache curled high, and a gold tooth winked from under his lip. "Well," he said, "look what the desert spit back." Hawk said nothing. "You're late," the man continued. "The gold from Dead Mule was supposed to be here a week ago." "No one mentioned a boa, an ambush," Hawk said quietly. The man chuckled, tapping his boot against the wooden step. "Nothing worth having comes free, Matthew." Maylin heard the name and glanced at Hawk. He kept his face even, but something in his eyes shifted, a silent flinch, a ghost rising from old graves. "We delivered," Hawk said. The man's smile vanished. And you brought them? His gaze shifted to Mei Lin and the sneer in his voice sharpened. You really never learn, do you? He said to Hawk. Another one, another damn souvenir. Eli tensed behind her. Hawk's hand hovered near his revolver but didn't move. She's not yours to insult, Hawk said, voice low. She ain't yours to protect, the man snapped. There was a beat of silence, then the man spat into the dust. We'll take the bags, then you and yours can ride the hell out of here. The tension coiled like a rattlesnake, but Hawk nodded. He motioned for the others to drop the gold saddlebags near the steps. Mei Lin felt the weight of it, months of riding, bleeding, burying men under stones. For this, gold handed over like feed. But that wasn't what this was about anymore. The bags thudded to the ground. The saloon man gave a satisfied smile. Good, now go. Hawk dismounted, slow, deliberate. Mei Lin followed, then Eli. The others stayed near their horses, hands never far from iron. The saloon man turned his back, whistled toward the door. 2 boys came out, young, barely older than 14, carrying rifles too big for their arms. They reached for the gold. Then it happened. One boy stumbled. The bag tore slightly. A flash of red cloth peeked through, not gold, blood-soaked canvas. The man spun. What the hell? A shot cracked, not from the Cowboys, from the rooftops. Gunfire erupted in every direction. Mei Lin dove sideways, grabbing the boy and pulling him behind a trough. Bullets ripped into wood. Glass exploded. The townsmen had hidden rifles everywhere. It was a trap. She crawled across the dirt, hearing screams, splinters, hooves. Someone was shouting. She found Eli crouched behind a wagon, reloading. They knew we were coming, he said between breaths. They never wanted the gold. They wanted us gone. Mei Lin peeked out. Hawk was pinned behind a pillar, firing slowly. The saloon man was nowhere in sight. Then she saw movement behind the chapel. A rider. 2. They were circling around. Mei Lin didn't think. She grabbed Eli's spare revolver from the ground and bolted toward the alley. Where the hell? He started, but she was already gone. She moved like a whisper, crouched low, darting behind barrels, boards, broken wagons, her bare feet silent, her breathing shallow. At the chapel's edge, she saw him. The saloon man, mounting a black horse, trying to ride away. He had something in his hand, a leather satchel. Not gold. Papers. Maps. Plans. She raised the revolver. Hands shaking. He hadn't seen her. She stepped forward, heart thunder in her ears. Stop, she said. He turned, saw her, smiled. Oh, you. His hand moved to his holster. She fired. The shot missed, struck the saddle. He swore and turned the horse sharply. She fired again. This time the bullet hit his leg. He screamed, fell from the horse, landed hard. She walked toward him, gun still raised. He tried to crawl, reaching for something under his coat. She stepped on his hand. He froze. I remember you, he hissed. Back at Langston, you were one of them. She nodded. You don't belong here, he spat. She looked down at him. Neither did you. She didn't say it aloud. Instead, she took the satchel, turned, and walked away. Behind her, he cursed, groaned. She didn't look back. When she returned, the town had gone still. Smoke rose from burning beams. Bodies lay in the dust. The Cowboys were gathering what they could. Hawk was limping, blood at his temple, but alive. She handed him the satchel. He opened it. Inside, D.'s land claims, evidence of forced removals, a ledger with names, Chinese, Irish, Mexican, crossed out with black ink and notes beside them, evicted, eliminated, acquired. Eli cursed under his breath. This town's built on bones, Hawk said quietly, and they were going to build higher, Eli replied. Hawk looked at Mei Lin. She didn't flinch. He nodded, then dropped the satchel into the fire. Flames licked it greedily. Paper curled, blackened, disintegrated. Justice wouldn't come from courts out here. Only fire and choice. They left Elkhorn Ridge by dusk. The dead buried, the wounded tended. The gold? Still there. They hadn't come for it, not anymore. Hawk rode beside Mei Lin as they crossed the edge of the valley. Mountains loomed ahead, distant and blue. You saved me, he said finally. She shrugged. I would have let myself die back there, he added. She looked at him. You weren't done yet, she said. They rode on. Night came fast, stars lit the sky. Camp was made near a creek, the others slept quickly, exhausted. Hawk sat beside her near the embers. "I saw something in you," he said, "back at that post. Something quiet, something stronger than chains." She didn't respond right away, then softly, "I saw it in you too, under the silence, under the grief." He nodded. "You could come with us," he said. "Past the mountains. We'll find better land, start new." She looked at the water, at her reflection in the slow current. "I might," she said. "But not today." He didn't press. In the morning she saddled her horse alone. The coin he'd given her was tied around her neck. Hawk approached, eyes uncertain. She smiled, small but sure. "I need to walk my own path," she said. He nodded, stepped back. Eli handed her a bundle, dried food, water, a small knife. She took it with a bow, then mounted and rode, not away, but forward. The plain was open before her, endless and unforgiving, but she was no longer a prisoner, no longer bleeding on someone else's post. She was the storm now, and nothing would ever chain her again.